Canned biscuits are terrible, but they're quick, right? Well, let's see what we can do in about the same amount of time. 6:19 a.m. Remember that. We're going to melt a little bit of butter here in the microwave, and then we're going to preheat our oven to 425 degrees. While our oven comes up to temp, we're going to grab a big bowl. We're going to grab 3 cups of self-rising flour, our melted butter, and a cup of milk, and we're going to make our biscuit dough. We are, of course, utilizing the time that it takes to preheat the oven to get our biscuit dough together here. But you know what? What else are you going to be doing for the few minutes that it takes to preheat your oven? So our 3 cups of self-rising flour goes into this bowl, and then I take my 1 cup of milk and pour it into my melted butter and kind of try and solidify that back up as I'm mixing it together. And this is like a workaround to the cutting up frozen butter and kneading solid butter and stuff in your dough because it's solidifying. I also keep my flour in the freezer so it's cold too. Everything stays super cold because that's the key to good biscuits apparently. Here I'm putting just a little bit of oil on this cookie sheet, and since I've got oil on my hands, I can work with this dough really easily without getting it all stuck in my hands and stuff. So I just finish kneading it here, and then I'm going to dump this onto that cookie sheet. Now, when we get it to the cookie sheet and we start rolling it out, keep in mind that this dough should rise roughly twice the size that it is as it bakes. So, if you want biscuits that are 2 inches tall, you should probably roll it out about 1 inch thick. At any rate, once you get it all, even, you can start cutting these out. And if you've got a biscuit cutter, great. I couldn't find mine, so I used the ring off of like a canning jar and just oiled it too. Spilled a little bit here, so that's what paper towels are for. But you just go and you start cutting your biscuits here. And then if you'll lay them near each other as they bake, they will kind of run into each other and get taller. If you want crispier edges, you can put some space between your biscuits as you're baking them, but they won't get quite as tall. Once you've cut everything out of this first press, you can kind of push everything back together really gently and cut a couple of more, but you don't want to overwork this. So after that, I just kind of take the scraps and form one final biscuit to get all of my biscuits made that way. And let's go over here and check, and just like I thought, the oven is still not preheated, so that should give us plenty of time to melt a little butter, and while we're over here, we might as well start warming up the skillet for that gravy we're about to make. So we're brushing the tops of these biscuits with butter, and seems like the oven may have finally preheated, so we're going to take about 1 pound of sausage and throw it into this cast iron skillet that I've had preheating over here with the oven. These biscuits are going to cook about 12 to 15 minutes, depending on how big they are, and that's going to give us plenty of time to make some sausage gravy because, again, what else are you doing while your biscuits are cooking? So we're just going to scramble this up in this skillet here and just render out as much of this fat as possible. Cook time on this is probably about 10 minutes to get all of it out that you can, and then we'll go on to making a roux. What's a roux, you ask? It's French, and it means equal parts fat and flour cooked down or something. I'm not sure. I don't speak French. Je ne sais quoi. Well, anyway, 1 pound of sausage is going to render down roughly 1/4 cup of grease, so we're going to add about 1/4 cup of flour to this because, that's equal measurements and stuff. You're going to want to cook this for about 2 minutes to get all that raw flour taste out of it because nobody wants that. And if you notice that there's still grease hanging around, maybe your sausage wasn't fully cooked when you started, or you just mismeasured because you're eyeballing things, you can throw a little bit more flour in. Again, you're going to want to cook it another minute or so to make sure that it does all cook. And then once you get a little font on the bottom of the pan, we can start deglazing that with some milk. You're going to want to go pretty quick here because milk will scald if you burn it, because that's what happens when you burn things. But basically, you're going to do this, and then it's going to come to a boil, and it will start thickening up because of that flour that is in it. On the stove, I like to get it significantly thinner than what I want my end product because you can always boil it till it's thicker, and then as it starts to cool, you also will get it to thicken up. And then you're obviously going to taste it here and season as needed. Of course, you're going to want to throw a lot of black pepper in there if you are from the South, because what goes better in gravy than black pepper? And let's take a look at those biscuits. Perfect, if I do say so myself. Gravy done, looking great. Remember 6:19 a.m., 6:52 a.m. I firmly believe if I wasn't moving my camera around and stuff, I could have got this done right at 30 minutes. But regardless, these biscuits are, fantastic. So the next time you have like 35 minutes for breakfast, give this a shot. You will not be disappointed. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons and leave me a comment.